Here we are with Pete, the original biker lawyer. What's the truth about insurance companies?
The bottom line with insurance companies is they're not out there to help the injured biker or injured motorist. They're out there to resolve cases as cheaply as they can. They don't care about the individual person, their recovery, their rights. They're doing their best to make a profit, and that means paying people as little as possible.
Are you saying that you can't trust insurance companies then, or?
That would be a good place to start.
Okay. We've talked a lot about motorcycles. So do the biker lawyers only cover personal injury law?
We do personal injury cases. It's basically cases where somebody has a duty to do something or not to do something, and they violated that duty. For example, you and me as motorists going down the road, we've got a duty to keep a proper lookout for the other guy.
So do you deal with torts?
Tort is when somebody has a duty to do something or not to do something, they violate that duty, and they cause damages.
In that case, what is tort reform?
Well, number one, anytime I hear the term tort reform, I say, no, it's not tort reform, it's tort revision. The word reform implies that there's something wrong that needs to be fixed. Tort revision is an animal of the insurance industry. It's simply a means to artificially limit what damages people can recover under what circumstances. It's taken away the rights of people.
But what else has tort reform caused over the years?
Tort reform has caused a skewed view in the minds of a lot of people because the insurance companies, when they're espousing this tort revision, come up with what sound like the most ridiculous cases possible where people are recovering vast sums of money for some silly little injury that they had. If you look deeper, it's almost never true, but it hardwires people to believe that most lawsuits are not legitimate when in fact just the flip side is true. But jurors are hardwired to think that anybody who's coming into court is going to be another one of these,
oh, they got hot coffee spilled on them
type of cases, when in fact it couldn't be further from the truth.
Why should I have insurance?
If you get in a wreck, one thing to keep in mind is 1 out of 10 motorists has no insurance at all. The other 9 probably have insufficient insurance. The state of Iowa requires only $20,000 per person liability insurance coverage. If you're in a wreck on a motorcycle, $20,000 is a spit in the bucket. But if you're a biker, in my opinion, it's even more important to have strong uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage to take into consideration that 1 out of 10 that has zero insurance and the rest of the population that doesn't have nearly enough insurance to cover the injuries and damages from a serious motorcycle crash.
What types of things aren't you allowed to say in court?
So the number one thing is we can't talk about insurance, which puts people at a tremendous disadvantage. It's typically a shock when somebody comes into the office with a new case to realize we can never talk about insurance. So when we go in front of a jury, we might have some nice little old lady as the defendant. The jury's looking at that nice little old lady thinking,
how can you sue her and you're going to take her home? And
we cannot balance the playing field by saying, but Mrs. Nice Little Old Lady has an insurance policy to cover this. You can't say that or you're going to get kicked out of court. So jurors either don't know or they can't be told that there's an insurance policy.
Even though you're essentially suing to get insurance money at that point.
That's exactly what you're doing. We're not suing this nice little old lady to take her house or car or retirement plan. We're suing to get her insurance policy. It's us against the insurance company, but the jury never knows that. We can never say anything about it.
Why don't you go after the insurance companies directly?
Well, because we can't. In the state of Iowa, when you file a lawsuit, you have to name the individual who hit you. You cannot, by law, name the insurance company, even though it's the insurance company's money that's behind it, and the individual that hits you really doesn't have much say in the case. You cannot name the insurance company. So if I show up in trial tomorrow and I'm suing Joe Lunchbucket and he's insured by State Farm Insurance, the lawsuit's against Joe Lunchbucket, and we can never say anything about State Farm. We can't say anything about the fact that Joe has insurance. It's just all the jury hears is that we're suing Joe Lunchbucket.
What do you want people to remember in general?
Actually, the number one thing is if you ride a motorcycle, make sure you have plenty of uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, because I was going to say 9 out of 10, but that doesn't cover it. Let's say 98 out of 100 cases that I see, there's not enough insurance coverage. Insurance companies don't push these products. If people would take the initiative to have high limits on their uninsured, underinsured motorist policies, then you actually do have protection against these kinds of scenarios. These products, uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage, it's super, super cheap. but the insurance companies don't push to try to sell it. So you almost have to have some inside knowledge that you really need this and why, because otherwise you're going to end up being another one of those sad stories that walks through the door at the start of riding season.
Brought to you by the Biker Lawyers. Injured? Ride with us.